All right, so we were going to talk about covers, and in particular, bad album covers or covers that have problems. And you had mentioned Jugulator, which is an
Yeah,
album cover I'm not too familiar with, really. So I want to let you
yeah.
kind of lead that in.
I don't own those albums by Priest with Ripper Owens, by the way.
Okay,
Um, it's just not Priest to me, and that's you know,
that's how I am with
it is,
Blaze Bailey. So I get it. I understand.
yeah. I actually like those two albums with Blaze, but for different reasons. It's not Iron Maiden, but I still like those albums.
Well, I had additional thoughts on that, but I'll save that for another time because I realized there were other reasons besides Blaze that I don't like those
Sure.
albums as much.
Sure, and
Um,
there are some songs that are problematic, but if you see the Jugulator cover, if you go to the store and you see it, you won't notice this online because of how DPI works on the screen.
mhm.
They sent a low res file to the printer, and the album cover is garbage. It came out all wrong. It's all fuzzy. It's all
Oh,
pixelated
oh, that's
and
awful.
raspy.
That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you can actually see the pics. I mean, I've had that happen to
yeah,
my
yeah.
own
You can see
covers.
that
So,
it's low res, and
all right.
that it is just so bad. Which, of course, that leads to the two bad Iron Maiden covers that we were talking about earlier, that are bad for completely different reasons.
Well, I thought we were only talking about one, so I didn't realize that you had felt that way about the other album cover. So let's start there because I'm very interested. Dance of Death is notorious for having bad cover art,
Yeah,
and it was the same artist who did the Cathedral albums, and they obviously brought him in because they wanted to get the vibe that he has on his album cover on the covers that he's designed. But my understanding, and again, the last time I really read about this was back in the late 2000s on the internet. But the story I remember encountering was he had sent them like a prototype image, and I don't know if it was that he backed out and they still wanted to use the cover, or if they just okayed it with just the prototype and didn't want any more done to it. And then he said, no, don't put my name on it because it looks terrible. I heard two different versions of the story. Um,
whatever the story is, that's a very unprofessional and unfinished piece
it
that went on
is,
the cover.
it is,
And
but
at some point, the art director needed to say, we're going to do a black cover with a little bit of some of these figures poking out through the blackness, because that thing is unfinished, it's unrendered, it's just a digital 3D model done in a sketch program, right?
true. But the thing about the story that's important is that does determine who is blamed for the bad cover. Like if it's the artist or if it's the cover whoever's in charge of the design of the cover for the album, or like Steve Harris if he was just being boneheaded about it. Do you know what I mean? Like so yeah, I don't really know what the true story is, but the one that I tended to believe was that they that Harris saw the prototype and liked it and didn't want to change it, and then the artist backed out after that. That always seemed like the more plausible story to me.
Right.
But
And I think because of that, that led to all the problems with the next one. Tim Bradstreet said he has never been more art directed or overly art directed than he was on that cover.
on a matter of
Matter,
life and death.
yeah, yeah.
No, what is it? Because I actually kind of like that cover, to be honest. So I guess first, is there a lot of agreement that that's not one of their better covers, or is it? Because Dance
I
of
don't.
Death, you can if you type in Dance of Death album cover, like everybody hates it. But I don't know if I've heard too much about A Matter of
Well,
Life and Death.
look at the cover of Matter of Life and Death.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is posed the same exact way, looking in the same exact direction. It's all flat. There's no depth to it. Everything is overly rendered,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see that whatever charm or artistry he was trying to put into that piece was just stripped away. And it's just this green blob with four figures in it. It's not a good painting.
Okay, see,
And
I don't get
Bradstreet is much better than that.
I don't get a bad vibe like that from it though. And again, I'm not as into art, so maybe it's that. But like I just see like it's kind of like evocative of like World War II, World War One maybe. You know what I mean? It's got that kind of I don't know. It's got the they just kind of look like ambling corpses that are marching to their death. But it kind of worked for me. It wouldn't be my favorite Iron Maiden album cover. Do you know what I mean? Like definitely, it's a little bit busy, but But like a lot of those other things, like it doesn't leap out to me the way Dance of Death. You look at it, and you're like, whoa,
No.
that's like unfinished.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, they're two different versions of bad, but there's no artistry at all to Matter of Life and Death. It's just functional.
Well, go ahead.
It doesn't do what the original ones did, right?
Yeah.
When you look at Power Slave, that's evocative.
Yeah.
And you're looking all over the album for all these hidden meanings and whatnot. You know, Peace of Mind, the same thing. Number of the Beast, the same thing. These were album covers that, what was his name? Derek something?
I can't remember his name, but yeah.
They were amazing covers, and they really grabbed us. If you look at the black and white version, it's a little bit better on Matter of Life and Death, but it's still not good. You can see there's this constant tinkering with the figures. There's no depth of field going on. And Bradstreet loves doing modern stuff. He loves doing tanks. He got his start in the gaming industry doing tanks. And he worked on Twilight 2000 way back in the day. And then you see him work on Vampire, and his stuff in Vampire is so dramatic. There's these amazing shapes to people's bodies and these curves that he'll put into paintings. And this is just a block with, if you just sat down and plotted out the composition of this cover, it's a block with 6 sticks on it. That's what it is. There's nothing going on here that you would say, oh wow, that's great, that's a great cover, I have to have this on my wall.
But see, well, so I do agree with you that it's different. Like, it does stand out in terms of it doesn't fit in with a lot of other Iron Maiden covers. So I look at this and I know it's not like Power Slaver. Like, my favorite cover is probably Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. That cover has the most, like, that's perfect to me. And this one, for what the album was, though, it kind of reflects the content well. Do you know what I mean? Like, it seems like it's a little more gritty, a little more serious, and it's just they're trying to evoke war, and it seems to do the job for me. But I don't, and again, I don't, depth of field and stuff like that, that doesn't pop out at me as a viewer, but that's not stuff I look for, so that might be,
You're not supposed to go looking for it. It's supposed to be there, and if it's doing its job right, you don't notice it. I'm an art director, so I look for these things. That's my job, is to make sure that it's more than just functional, that it's evocative. Okay. And there's nothing evocative. I'm not a fan of Stranger in Strangeland, only because everything on it is overly rendered, and so there's no push and pull. But that's a different problem for a different time. Matter of Life and Death is clearly one of those situations where somebody was art directed to death, and they were probably scared to death they were going to get another Dance of the Dead or Dance of Death. It was
Dance of Death.
Yeah. By the way, an album I do not like either. So
which also we do disagree on that album, because I like that album and you don't. Yeah. It's definitely not. I don't think it's one of their more popular albums. Like, I think it's generally considered like a decent Iron Maiden album. I don't think it really ever rises too high or too low. I really like the last song, the Journeyman, that they have on there, the acoustic one. And there's a number. That's a good song. Yeah, and there's a number of other songs on there that I just have a similar reaction to.
Passchendaele is a good song. Yeah. I don't remember everything that's on that album, but there's a couple of okay songs on there, but it's generally not a great album. And I remember people talking and saying, this is Maiden's best album ever.
Well, there's always that when a new album comes out.
True.
When a new album comes out, there's always over praise that an album gets, because you know what I mean, because people have been waiting. I like Face in the Sand. I think that's a really good song. I like Dance of Death. I like, the lead-in songs are fine. I think they're good. But Journeyman's the one that really stands out to me. Like you said, Passchendaele. And I think Age of Innocence isn't too bad either. But it's not hits all the way through. Do you know what I mean? It's not Power Slave. It's not Number of the Beast or something like that. But it's got some. It's the ones that are good are really, really good. Is how
Brave New World gave me the impression that they were back and they were making amazing work again. and to follow up with Dance of Death was a really big disappointment. And then, of
Yeah.
course, Matter of Life and Death came out, and there's not a bad song on that
Yeah.
album.
Well, there's a reason for some of that too, because Dance of Death was made in like a matter of months. I think they had very little time, so the songwriting was rushed, but also so was the recording, and so it's kind of why I think it is the album it is, and I think it's it's not as good as Brave New World or Matter of Life and Death, because those are very good albums, and like you said, they're kind of solid the whole way through. And especially with Brave New World, they were getting all this energy just from the fact, like when that album came out, that was like one of the happiest days of my life, because I was surprised when it came out. I didn't know, I had heard nothing about it because I had kind of fallen off the radar with following bands like this and stuff, largely because I was, so disenchanted because of things like Iron Maiden leaving Bruce Dickinson leaving Iron Maiden, and so much of the kinds of music we were getting in the 90s. When that came out, it was really exciting. And when I think Dance of Death, they almost kind of have to make an album like that in order to follow up with A Matter of Life and Death. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of need to, like I feel like based on what I've been told about the making of Dance of Death, it was kind of done like in a pressure cooker type situation, and I think that really, it doesn't necessarily produce the greatest album, but it improves your songwriting talent, and I think that served them on the following album. But again, that's just my impression.
So I really do not understand how a band only has X number of days or weeks to make an album. Who is creating these artificial deadlines?
I have no idea.
That they had to rush. That doesn't make it. Iron Maiden doesn't need to make an album if they don't want to.
I mean, I don't know what the details were. I'm imagining that they must have at least agreed to it, thinking that they could do it, or maybe they liked the challenge of, can we do it inside this time frame?
Sure.
And there could have been economic pressures, like, hey, Brave New World came out, you have to follow up by this date so we can get it to. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what it's. I guess in our world it would be like, Gen Con is coming up, so you got to release your book by this date.
Sure.
But I don't know. I have no idea. I think it's sometimes okay though. I don't think that, like, I think bands can have room to kind of mess up a little bit if there are some gems on there. Do you know what I mean? Especially if it helps prepare them for their next album. But I don't know, what I mean, it did, when I've read about it, it sounds like there were other people like management and stuff that were making those calls. I don't think it was, I don't think that was a creative decision.
Yeah, well, no creative person would say, I'm going to force myself to put out crap in 6 weeks.
Well, yeah, and it probably wasn't 6 weeks, but it did sound like it was months. But again, I don't know. Some people might be like, I could see being excited by, can I do it in that time? Do you know what I mean? Like, if I'm forced to write music in a shorter time frame, what will it sound
I wrote
like?
a game in 6 hours once, but I don't charge for it. It's free. Right?
Yeah, no, I get you. I
gave myself that challenge to see if I could do it. It's actually a popular game, which is funny, but I did it for free. I put it out for free, and I do the same thing with anything that I think is subpar for my production parameters. What I expect out of myself.
Well,
and
go ahead.
This just felt there were just so many things when I was listening to it for the very first time. I just thought, what is going on? Are we having another Prayer for the Dying? Are we having another Tail Gunner moment where they're just shitting out songs because they have to?
Well, what Steve Harris said was that one of the things he said was that he was kind of, it was like scary but also exciting because they didn't know what the music they didn't know what it was going to come out like. Do you know what I mean? So I could kind of see, like, maybe you're a little bit bored, especially when you think of the kind of albums they were making up through this point, like even including like the Blaze Bayley albums, like those more prog oriented albums, and then Brave New World, and this might have been kind of like a jolt to the system. But I don't know. I think there's enough gems on it that I'm fine with it. But I think the cover art is really a problem. The cover art looks awful, and I wouldn't argue that it's not as, the Brave New World and A Matter of Life and Death are considerably better in
Now,
terms of quality.
I can see with Jugulator, right? You've ordered this, what is already a preposterous album cover. It just looks dumb, regardless of the pixelation.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that you decide that's what you want, you put it on the cover, and then somebody sends the wrong file. They send this low res file, or somehow they never got a high res because the idiot they were working with doesn't know how to work in high res. I don't know, right? Those are technical problems that lead to a crappy cover.
Yeah.
Dance of Death, you get that. You have an opportunity to say, no, we're not going to put this on the fucking cover. We're going to do something else. We'll make this a concept album with all black or all white or whatever. Maybe we'll have a face poking through, something we can. They could have grabbed some shitty stock art somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And done it on a black background with just a little bit peeking through, and you would have said, oh, okay, well, this is an interesting movie. But you would have never said the shit that gets said over that cover that they finally put on there. And that's just poor decision making. It's unforgivable.
The only thing I can think of is that for some reason when they okayed it, they must have wanted to have that computer generated look. But you know, I don't understand how, you know, especially if the artist is telling you it's not done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's the part that really is like, you should probably listen to the artist if they're saying that. But again, we don't know what happened. It's like a lot of these things, like there are these stories that we hear and we don't know how true they are. For all we know, it was a different series of events. But yeah, I guess something else that I know you said you wanted to talk about was Pyromania.
I don't want to talk about it. I feel obligated to talk about it. Let's be very clear. So one of the things I think you know this, but maybe we should make people clear of. I listen to a lot of shit just to see what's out there and also to have something to talk about on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I was up late not last night, but a few nights ago, and I was listening to something. I think it was that band you sent me, Black Hills.
Yeah, I remember saying that.
And because it's a full album, YouTube's suggested a bunch of different albums that I might want to listen to. Something from Scorpions, something from Whitesnake. Some reason they thought I wanted to listen to glam metal. And Def Leppard Pyromania was on there. And I realized I've never heard the entire album from beginning to end. I didn't own it, and I only knew the 4 songs that were made into videos.
Okay.
And so I listened to it from beginning to end. And it was quite an experience. And I want people to understand, I do this for people that listen to the podcast. Okay. I put myself through that so that I could talk about how bad it was. Did you listen to it?
I have not listened to the album in a while, but I had that album when I was younger. I think I told you the story. I think I traded cigarettes for that album on the bus. And it was a really stupid decision because I remember, first of all, obviously if the kid was willing to make that trade, he must have been willing to for a reason. And then when I got the album, because I had heard Pyromania was this great album, and I didn't really know much about Def Leppard at the time. It just none of the songs really landed with me. That was really what it was. The overall Def Leppard song is not a sound that I really gravitate towards in general.
Sure.
Especially when they're being kind of like, I don't know, peak Def Leppard. Do you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't work for me. It doesn't move me emotionally. I understand why some people like it, but Pyromania is one of those albums where it just didn't make a big impression. I listened to it like twice, and then I never listened to it again after that.
Robert Lang is the producer. I just had to go look it up, and I watched the behind the music about it, which is fascinating. That the stories that came out of the making of that album are better than the album. Phil Collin, I guess, is the guitar player that joined, and they got rid of somebody. I don't know. Anyway, there's a lot of stories behind it. The making of the behind the music is on YouTube somewhere. People should listen to it and watch it. It's fantastic. But the album's bad. I think there's 10, 11 songs on there. Every single one is predictable. Every single one, Joe's voice sounds exactly the same. There's no contrast. The songs, even when a song is good, they find a way to ruin it. So that, you get that's a really nice little piece that they did in there. And then immediately they just go into the pop sound. And
Which is,
it's very difficult for me to be objective about it, but
Mhm.
even from an objective perspective, there's nothing groundbreaking
Yeah,
here.
and I don't object to the pop sound itself, but that's probably the reason why the album is so popular and has its reputation. But just the particular pop sound that they get is, I guess, what I'm not like I think I'm looking at the track listing now, and the only song that I really kind of like from that album is Rock of Ages. I don't even think like Photograph is a song that I'd really want to hear right now. Do you know what I mean? Um, they have some songs in the later 80s that I kind of like too, but again, it's for similar reasons to why I would like Rock of Ages. Do you know what I mean? They're not songs that I would put on a top 10 list for sure, and they're kind of guilty pleasures. But
There was a part of Stage Fright, a song called Stage Fright. It's the third one on there. That was actually kind of interesting. There was a little piece in there that I kind of liked. But if I never hear anything from this album again, I won't lose sleep.
Okay, I'll have to. I don't remember Stage Fright too well, so I'll have to check that out after the podcast.
Well, yeah, it's one of those kind of B-sides that the band probably thinks is a throwaway,
Mm-hmm.
but if you have any kind of ear for music, you can say, oh, they actually made some interesting choices in there. So of course the producer didn't like it, or of course the band didn't like it. Interesting doesn't sell. We have to make this thing as Disney as we can.
And well, and I think what they were going for. Like I don't know. I'll have to hear the song before I comment because I don't want to speak without knowing exactly what you're referring to.
Yeah.
But I did. You would texted me about this Orgasmatron.
Yes.
So I did something I don't normally do, which is I made a point of actually listening to the song with the lyrics in front of me. Which Orgasmatron is a song I know, but it's not a song that I've paid some attention to the lyrics, but
right.
I'm not a lyric person, and so I wanted to because I figured the lyrical content might have something to do with why you like the song. So yeah, I want to know why your words were this is the greatest song ever made. I think so.
Well, it's certainly Motorhead, Megadeth. It's certainly Motorhead's best song
Mm-hmm.
of all time. And I know you disagree because you have your favorites.
Yeah.
But I think it is the quintessential. Even though they're not a metal band, this is a quintessential metal song.
Okay.
And yeah, it's probably one of the best songs of all time. I heard it when I was, I want to say 16 or 17, and it just eye-opening. Probably one of the reasons I'm as jaded as I am about so many things is because how heavy that song is on every level. And the lyrics are fantastic.
Now, and it's interesting because it's almost like a spoken word song. It's not really sung. Like there's a little bit, I suppose, but it's basically kind of like it's almost like it's still Motorhead, but it's like poetry in the world of Motorhead. So the lyrics were interesting. I thought it was interesting that he kind of goes from like religion to politics to war in the way that he does.
Yeah.
And and it's an interesting concept, and the imagery is very, I don't know, the words are very effective.
Yeah,
and
he's done a lot of material, right? If you look at the amount of stuff that Motorhead has put out, and a lot of times he's just recreating the same songs again with a different thing. I think Brotherhood of Man is this song, but about bikers, right?
Okay.
They're very similar songs, but I don't think he's ever written smarter than he's written on this song. The Ace of Spades is fun, but it's just about taking chances. That's all it is. But this song is about why peasants remain peasants. This song is about why all of us are crushed under somebody else's boot for all of eternity. And it's unflinching. It's a genius piece of work, in my opinion. And it does not get enough credit because so many people like Overkill and what's the one about the snake? I'm forgetting song titles at the moment. I don't know why, but something about the snake, taking hold of the snake or something. Anyway, he's got so many what's the word I'm looking for? Perennial songs that people like that are a lot more ACD-ish, ACDC-ish, and less intelligent on the scale that this song is.
Well, when I think of a Motorhead song, I don't. I mean, not that I think that he's stupid. I don't think he's stupid, but I think more witty than intelligent type lyric. Do you know what I mean? Like more humorous and witty and that kind of thing.
Right.
This song kind of seems like he's being serious for a moment, kind of like he was in like 1916. You know, it's kind of like, oh, he's being a bit more serious than normal. And I think that it also kind of explains Lemmy a little bit to me. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not like a massive Motorhead fan, but I do respect them and I like a lot of their music. And you know, but Lemmy has this personality that everybody knows, and he's kind of the, you know, he's kind of, I don't know, he doesn't abide by normal social rules, right? And he, you know, all these things. And this kind of is an interesting explanation, perhaps, for why. Do you know what I mean? Like why he doesn't need to play by the world's rules. So I, you know, and it's just it's very well written, and it, I don't know, I especially when, you know, I suppose if you hear the Name Orgasmatron, you don't think that that's what you're about to be in for, right? Because
the title's stupid.
Yeah,
I'm not going to defend the title of the song at all.
I mean, you think it's going to be about like a dildo or like or maybe Barbarella? Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, something along those lines, or what the Sleeper movie, that Woody Allen movie that had the same machine in it. But it's actually pretty insightful. So,
I'm on a website right now that calls it their heaviest song of all time. They put it number 4 on the top 20 Motorhead songs. Lemmy often insisted that Motorhead were not a heavy metal band, and it's a fair point. But Orgasmatron is a vicious, brooding heavy metal song, whichever way you slice it.
And it's actually a very simple. The riff is really simple too, but it works. So it's almost like, I mean, it's really focused, this song.
Yeah. I think songs like this, and I've said this before when we talk about Behemoth and other really, really heavy bands, I think songs like this, where the sound is almost pressing down on your chest and making it difficult for you to get up, those kinds of songs grab me more than any kind of songs in metal. I love really fast stuff. I won't lie about that, but this, I will always want to listen to this before I listen to, say, Hangar 18 by Megadeth.
Well, and heavy really does require a certain amount of slowness, you know. So, which I think that's something that metal often, like, you need fast metal for sure, but I think metal often forgets that the heaviness kind of comes from the slowness, and if you bring it back down to that slow, you know, and Motorhead's a band that's kind of, you know, more associated with up-tempo speeds, but here
I
they
think
really,
it's one of the reasons brutal metal doesn't work, because brutal metal requires speed and heavy at the same time, and there's no place for your brain to rest, so you're just getting punched for nothing.
Well, and that's why, you know, when I do listen to bands like that, I tend to prefer the bands, again, you know, I know this isn't your cup of tea, but like that Bolt Thrower song I'm always sharing is an example of one where, you know, you have that really slow sort of heavy sound, and then it's followed up with something faster.
I was listening to Bolt Thrower the other day, and the song I heard, Crusade, Fourth Crusade.
Oh, that's a good album. It
is so good until he starts singing, right? That band is so effing talented, and then he gets involved.
But again, that's because you don't like the Cookie Monster vocals, right? So like,
but I mean, he's not even very good at Cookie Monster vocals. So let's call a spade here, and at least admit that there are times when Cookie Monster can work, and this isn't it. I mean,
I don't know that they're bad. Like, I tend to prefer, when it comes to like death metal vocals, I prefer a little bit higher tone because it rides over the sound better.
Right.
But for what they're doing, his sound kind of works for me because they're trying to give this, like, it almost sounds like an exhaust pipe type of Cookie Monster vocal. Do you know what I mean? It's meant to be this big lumbering thing, the sound. And so I think that I get why they do what they do. But
I just think it succeeds better without him. I think the band is a better band without his voice.
What kind of vocals would you like to hear over that music?
Well, I love Death, right? We talk about Death a lot on the show. Death is a fantastic band. And Flesh and the power that it holds is one of the greatest songs of all time. It should be on a top 20 list. Mm-hmm. And when you look at him and you hear his regular voice, and his crowd banter, by the way, is awful. Mm-hmm. He does not know how to talk to the audience. And then all of a sudden, first of all, he's pulling off 700 riffs per second, and he's doing that voice. It works together so well, so insanely well, and I don't know why.
Yeah, right? That's my go-to vocal. That's my favorite. That's my favorite death metal vocals. That's like, especially on their first album. When you first hear that die, that really works beautifully.
I think that's what makes Megadeth work for so many reasons over Metallica. But that's one of the reasons that Megadeth works over Metallica is Dave Mustaine's voice is cynical.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not arrogant or ennui or whatever you want to call James Hetfield's voice.
It's almost a little bit whiny, but it works for him because he has. Yeah. I like to compare him to Starscream a little bit, but it's like Starscream in a way that you expect like an angry young man to be, and it works. I get what you're saying there.
You understood Starscream's problems too, right?
Yeah.
So his voice becomes sympathetic because you realize he's working for an idiot.
Yep.
Right? So you become sympathetic to what Starscream's going through. And I think the same thing is true of Dave Mustaine. You can hear the derision in his voice, the point at which he's gotten to where he's just so cynical about everything. This is the voice I'm going to use to sing.
Yeah, and he's also not holding back his emotions. Like a lot of vocals, what you're getting are these are the two emotions I'm going to let you see. Do you know what I mean? Because this is the image I want. And with Mustaine, you get a lot more vulnerability in there. Yeah. We also we wanted to discuss mosh pits for a little bit. I want
to talk about vocalists for just a little bit longer.
Oh, sure.
I listened to a band called Frozen Crown, and they're your typical power metal band. They came on after Unleash the Archers the other day on YouTube. They've got one good song, and the rest are just all the same. It's the same with all the same power metal. And I realized something about power metal when you said what you just said about emotion, is that power metal draws upon emotion, but it's always the same emotion. It's always that same
it's triumphant.
Operatic.
It's triumphant. It's always triumphant.
Yeah, exactly. And that gets tiresome. I get sick of a band that I can't tell which song I'm listening to.
Yeah. And to be fair, like, there's a band called Rhapsody. I think they changed their name to Rhapsody of something now, like Rhapsody of Fire or something. But I remember they had some albums that had a lot of variation on emotion. Like, it was still operatic, but it wasn't all triumphant, But I do think when you think power metal, the thing that leaps to mind is definitely that you picture a person going like this with their fist, and whatever they're singing is matching that, that physical movement. I think that's what happens to a lot of metal subgenres. It's not always bad, but it is limiting. Anthrax could never veer into Pink Floyd territory, right? Do you know what I mean?
I'm so glad you brought up Anthrax. Let's get back to that in just a second, but finish your thought.
No, so I'm just saying, like, I think, I love thrash metal, but one of the downsides of thrash metal is they can't escape thrash metal. The same way that, unlike Judas Priest, who can escape, any style of metal they want to. Do you know what I mean? They could put out something that is, more like a rock song or more like a folk song, and people would kind of accept it. Do you know what I mean? Like, but if you're locked in one of these subgenres, you got to, number one, be worried about the fans, but you also probably have your own internal orthodoxy. I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about the band Cathedral, and I liked their first album a lot. That came out, and I was like, wow, I've never heard this before. Then they had an album, I think it was called Through the Ethereal Mirror, or Beyond the Ethereal Mirror. It was their second album. And it was the one that I posted the song to that you were that got us on this discussion about the cover.
That started this whole conversation.
Yes. But that album is actually a really groundbreaking doom metal album. It takes the genre in a whole new direction. But when that album came out, I was so orthodox. Do you know what I mean? I was so, this is what doom metal has to be, that as soon as I heard the funkiness, as soon as I heard the psychedelic stuff, even though there were traces of it in the first album, it was dampened by the overall sound. I just couldn't accept it. I was so angry at the band for not following up with an album that sounded the same. And I think that's one of the things that just kind of, there's two things that I think kill subgenres. Number one is the orthodoxy, and then number two is like the splintering, where you get like, you know, these really specific types of subgenre that can only, you know, the genre went from doing 4 things and now it can only do 2 or 1 things. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it always has to do those things. If it doesn't do those things, it's a violation. So yeah, go ahead.
I think what you're hitting on is very interesting, and I want to talk about Anthrax in just a second. I think one of the things that happened with the Big Four is they stayed true to the genre as much as they could for as long as they could. And then, of course, Metallica becomes a country western band, and then Megadeth loses its way. Slayer never once, well, only once, puts out shit, right? That Melikos, Medorio, whatever the name of that album is, Magica, Mellifluous, it's an awful album. Everybody knows it's an awful album. It doesn't sound like Slayer. And they go back to doing what made them famous. And Slayer stayed true to Slayer. Even if they got monotone, Slayer stayed true to Slayer, and they stopped trying to chase something else.
Yeah.
Anthrax, among those bands, I want to love them so much. I really do. Please believe me when I say Among the Living was my favorite album in high school. Mm-hmm. But Anthrax never knew what they wanted to be. And they struggled. The John Bush years, they don't sound like a metal band. They sound like a grunge band. And Scott Ian's one of the best guitar players in all of metal. So he's not the problem. They never had a singer that fit their sound. They never knew what they wanted to be, and they were constantly chasing something. What's that Persistence of Time album? Is that the name of it?
Yeah, I remember that album.
That thing's awful. That's an awful album. It sounds like UB40. It sounds like some pop band from the late 80s trying to make a metal band, not a metal band trying to sound...
I have not listened to Persistence of Time since it came out. Like I remember that was one.
Bad.
That was an album where I remember getting it shortly after it was released. I don't really remember my opinion on that album though. I'm not a huge Anthrax person, so I probably shouldn't have used them as an example because I was just
no. They were a great example because I do want to talk about because we've never talked about them on the show, and I feel like they don't get enough love. But there's a reason they don't get enough love. They did that new album with Judas Priest. They have a song called Judas Priest on there. I think it's Hail to the King or something, or Ritual Kings. I don't remember the names of their albums, unfortunately. And it's a really strong, solid album. Yeah. And then they followed up with the new one. I'm going to look this stuff up so I don't sound like an idiot. Anthrax albums. And they went right back to doing bad stuff.
Well, one thing I will like, and again, I don't know Anthrax music that well. I there's some of it I know, the stuff that's like, out there that's popular, and like there were a few albums I had. One of the things that I do like about Anthrax, there's 2 things. Number one, I like Scott Ian's personality. I like when I see him talking about metal, he's one of the most thoughtful and informed people on the topic of metal. So that gets me. Also, his understanding of the importance of rhythm guitar, because he's a rhythm guitarist. And riffs, and so like when he talks about Ted Nugent, he understands why Ted Nugent is good, and the critics who don't get Ted Nugent miss that it's the riffs, that he's a rhythm guy. The other thing I like about Anthrax is they were kind of more open-minded than a lot of metal bands in that they were more willing to cross that hip-hop line when it was totally not allowed. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think that's a ding on their record at all. I think a lack of understanding of who they even are has hurt the band. And and I agree with you about everything about Scott. I love Scott. I've listened to everything that he's ever done for anybody, right? I even listened to Stormtroopers of Death, which is about as racist and ugly a band as somebody's ever put together. But at the time, it was funny, and we listened to it, and it was good stuff, and you could see how it was affecting Anthrax. But Anthrax has gone through too many singers. And every single time they're putting out an album, they're changing so much they don't know what they want to be. And just to get back to it, I don't want to lose it. Worship Music is the good one that they put out recently with the song Judas Priest on it. And For All Kings is a new one, which only has a couple of good songs on it. And it goes right back to doing what they've always done with Joey Belladonna, the singer, which is that they just kind of let him do what he wants. and he's not matching what the rest of the band is doing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it would be. We probably at some point it might be interesting to do a dive through their discography because they are a band. I feel like I need to be more familiar with their, who they really are. But maybe it's part of what you're saying because I feel like whenever I have listened to them, I kind of have trouble characterizing them. Do you know what I mean? Like
Right.
And it might have to do with what you're talking about. But yeah. Go ahead.
I've been trying to commission another song. Right. We did the one song together.
Yep.
And then I commissioned another song through Fiverr, and I struggled to find a singer for it. And recently, I decided I wanted to make another song again, and I've been doing that in my free time here and there. And the struggle is always finding a singer, always finding that voice that matches what everybody else is doing, because that will kill a metal band faster than anything. You can't do Pink and Katy Perry cannot sing on a metal album.
Well, and it's more than that. You need somebody, like, singers have to be able to act. Do you know what I mean? Like, a guitar player just has to be able to play and express emotion, and a singer needs to be able to like there's a difference between somebody who's good at singing but can't convey the, like the I don't know how to put it. Like, it's like somebody who knows how to read poetry well. Do you know what I mean? There's a difference between me reading poetry and I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to emphasize the right syllables. I'm not going to get any emotion in there versus somebody who understands it and is able to convey what the poem is, like the rhythm and the emotion and the personality of the poetry. And a lot of singers don't have that. And so when they don't, it doesn't work. What's the, like, in terms of finding a singer, like, without bitching about specific people, I suppose, what's the problem that you keep running into with them?
I honestly think you need to start with the singer. You need to know what the singer's voice is so that the band can build music around their voice. And it sucks that that's the truth. It sucks that that's the situation that most bands find themselves in. But let's look at Van Halen, right? Van Halen is a different band when Sammy Hagar joins. They changed their sound. And while I don't like any version of Van Halen, I appreciate that they understood this is the kind of music we're going to play when David is singing.
Yeah.
This is the kind of music we're going to play when Sammy is singing. And I don't know, is it back to David or did they get a third person?
I don't know where they are now. I think and that band's always been kind of a mess in terms of relationships.
So I just think that that's the way you need to go. That's just the truth about music. And if you don't want to do that, if you just want to make music, then don't have a singer. Don't force yourself, because there's plenty of instrumental bands like Russian Circles who are absolutely fucking genius, and they don't need a singer to grab you for 20 minutes. Or that new band you just showed me. What's their name?
Which one?
Black
was it?
Hills.
Black Hills. Yeah, the rhythm guitar version of Buckethead.
Yeah. But they're fantastic. They're atmospheric. Every song grabs me. I don't stop and go, oh, here comes the bluesy rail slide. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the atmosphere. Let's make the music. And I think, like I said, you have to start with the singer.
Well, in some music there is no place for a vocalist, like you're saying. So, like, if you're essentially playing like classical guitar, Jamie, it's going to be harder to work in some kind of vocals in there. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you can find the right, like, if you have a band with an established sound, like Candlemass had an established sound, and they got Messiah Marcolin, and it worked beautifully putting him in with that sound. You can pair it that way too, but I think the singer is going to, the problem that I think a lot of bands have, that maybe it's a lack of musical training, or maybe it's just a lack of consideration for the singer's limits. You have to be able to write within the singer's range, and a lot of bands don't do that. Do you know what I mean? A lot of bands, you can hear the vocalist struggling to stay in key because they're not writing within the singer's range. That's, again, I'm not as familiar with this era of Iron Maiden's music, but that's something that people always say about the Blaze Bayley era, is that they really weren't writing to his vocal range, and it kind of made it harder for him.
Right. I was just thinking the same thing. I was thinking that we're going to end up back to Blaze talking about Iron Maiden, because that's a perfect example of the band not adapting.
Yeah. So I mean, so I won't hang on the point too long then for that reason, but I do think you have to consider. I don't know if it's that you necessarily have to have the vocalist first, but you have to know what the vocalist is, right? And then understand that the music is going to have to adapt to that person's range, their singing style, and all these things.
Sure.
And also the guitar tone has to, like, if the guitar tone is overwhelming the vocals. When I first got in a death metal band in high school, you couldn't hear the vocalist because me and the drummer wanted to be super loud. Do you know what I mean? And the vocalist he was a bass. He couldn't project over that sound. We had to go to a higher register if we wanted to utilize his voice. So I think that's I think that's
I took a couple of singing lessons. That's exactly what she said to me. She said, you have a weird range that you sing in, and if you get in a band, the band is going to have to work around that.
Yeah, what was do you know what your range was?
My range is bass, but it's just at the higher end of bass. It's really narrow. I do not have a wide octave that I can sing in.
Okay.
And I don't really have that great of a voice, but I know that I can match tone at times. But for me, it was just my range is so small and so limited in this bass range that I sing in that she said it's going to be difficult for a band to work with you.
Yeah, I'm like a low bass, and I don't like it. It was never, especially in like a genre like metal. I think that's really hard unless you can project it or something. It's difficult. So, I think again, you have to consider the parameters of the vocalist. But yeah, so I don't know. Do we want to move on to the next topic, or do we?
How much have we already talked about? Do we have enough for an episode?
I think we do, but I think we might want to keep pressing and see how much we can.
Sure. Well, you and I can talk forever. People should know that we talk for another 2 hours when we're done recording.
Yeah, I ramble a lot, is what it boils down to, I think.
I didn't say that. I'm glad you said it, but I didn't.
Well, I know it's true. I know it's true about me. So, mosh pits. We were going to discuss that. I don't know if there's a lot.
Tell me what you wanted to say about them.
I didn't know what I wanted to say about them. I put it out to the group. I asked people. I was like, hey, because I used to play in a band. I used to see the mosh pit. I used to see them at shows when I went to attend shows. But I never wanted to involve myself in a mosh pit. It looked like somebody combined football and heavy metal music, and I didn't like the idea of, I'm 5'7". At the time I was probably like 125 pounds. It didn't seem like a good idea to just step into a mosh pit.
I've been in about 6 or 7 mosh pits. I jammed my thumb up really good in the last one that I was in. And so I stopped doing them. And they got more violent, right? I did them in the 80s and 90s. Well, and I wouldn't do one today.
What I want to know, number one, I want to know what the attraction is. But before we even address that, I want to know, what are the rules of the mosh? Like, I don't understand. Are you only allowed to just charge at people and smash into them? Are you
I can't tell you what the modern rules of the mosh pit are, but you weren't supposed to run and charge at people. You were just supposed to run in a circle, and then people would push you on the edges back into the circle, right? Okay. So you were just moving however you wanted to move. And I've been in punk mosh pits and metal mosh pits, and they're a little different.
Okay.
But I think the rules have changed drastically. Now it's just about trying to hurt people. Well, now it's trying to...
When this was back in '94, the mosh pits I saw, people were like running at each other like linebackers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, what are the rules? Are you allowed to punch? Are you allowed, like, I didn't understand it. And they were really into it and they loved it. And people were like, they looked kind of hurt afterwards. And I didn't understand the attraction.
I was at Ozfest 2, and there were 2 stages. The big stage was for all the crocodile, alligator, reptile metal, right? The old school metal. And the other stage was for the new metal, Slipknot, and all the bands that I can't stand. That one was way off in the dirt somewhere, and it was It was violent as all get out. And when they finally shut down that stage, this wall of kids was walking up the hill to get to the other area, just covered in dirt and sweat. And I thought, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We're in the middle of the high desert, Mojave Desert area, just scorching heat, middle of summer. There's no way you're comfortable. What were you thinking? How important was it for you to get out there and mosh to Slipknot, because they were the final act on the second stage? How important was that for you? Look how you got to spend the rest of the day at this stage now like that, because there's no water here. There's no water fountains out in Devore.
Do they have
California.
water bottles so people could?
Yeah, you could go buy water bottles, but how many would it take to clean you off when you're covered in caked on clay mud?
Yeah, that would be pretty tough.
Yeah. So I don't know what the appeal was, right? I don't know what the appeal is now to do that. I know what the appeal was for me when I was 19, but I can't speak to why people would do what they're doing now, because it looks so violent now.
What gets to me is I see it's the size differences. You see a 200-pound 5'10" kid and a 130-pound 5'5" kid. You see some tall lanky kid that's got he's all bone, and they're in there together, and it's just that does not look like a good combination to me. That looks like a recipe for somebody breaking a limb or getting knocked the fuck out. It just doesn't seem like it would be. Right. But I don't know. People seem to enjoy it, so I'm not against moshing. I just don't. I never, even when I was playing music and people were moshing to what I was playing, I didn't understand why they were doing it. I was really perplexed by the whole moshing thing from very early on.
It was around 2010. I went to a Saxon concert. I couldn't even tell you who opened for them, and a small show. It looked like an office building. That's the kind of place that the concert was at. It was really weird. And off to my left, there's this guy. He had this kind of look about him. He was really chubby and you could tell, had trouble making eye contact, very weird. Everything about him made me uncomfortable, right? And he's maybe 10 feet off to my left. Nobody's thrashing or moshing or anything like that. It's Saxon. But he's having a good time, and he's doing the devil horns, and he's just shaking his head and whatever. And I constantly keep my eye on this guy, because everything about him was making me uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And this is the funniest part of this story, and this is what makes me a dirtbag. At one point, he accidentally bumps into this 12-year-old kid, right? And he stops. He says, "Are you okay, little dude?" And inside, I'm just cracking up at myself, thinking, "Oh my God, this guy's the nicest, sweetest guy." And I've been sitting here thinking that he's going to eat me in the parking lot, right?
I've been there. I've made those kind of judgments and been totally wrong. You feel like a terrible person when that happens.
I did feel like a terrible person, because all of my instinct was wrong, right? Yeah. You rely on that instinct to give you the right messages, so that that's primal stuff, telling you stay away from this kind of person because they're terrifying. And I normally don't make those kind of judgments, but here I was. This guy, something off about this guy. Yeah, what's off about him is that he's really nice, and I'm a dick. That's what's off about it.
I've met a few. I've met a few people where they would look like they were bodybuilder types, and my initial impression was, oh, this person's gonna be trouble, and then no, they were like the nicest person in the world, gentle as anything. But I think what you do is you kind of assess the threat level a person presents to you, and you assume the worst if they look like they can hurt you. Yeah. But yeah, so we probably do want to wrap it up soon. One thing I wanted to say before we move on to the next thing is I know we were thinking of at some point covering Italian metal music, and I put the question out, but I got no responses from people. So if anybody's listening who knows Italian metal, I want to know good Italian metal songs that you think I should listen to, because I'm trying to use the YouTube algorithm for it, and I'm not getting a good cross section of music, I feel. So I don't know if you had a similar thing, Jim, but I found it very. I found depending on which hole you go down, you could get very different impressions about what Italian heavy metal music really is.
Apparently Abaddon is Italian metal. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
But the rest of these bands I've never heard of. Google's giving me a short list.
like Rhapsody, I think is Italian, and there's a couple of bands that I know of, but like I, and I know that they have like a thriving metal scene, so I just kind of would be interested to to explore it a little bit.
YouTube has a video called Top 15 Italian Metal Bands, and another one Top 10 Italian Metal Bands.
But you know what? Following that kind of a thing is how I remember that song I sent you. The like, I can't even repeat the name of the band. You know, I forget what it was, but it had like it was the Axel F cover. The
oh, that thing was so
yeah,
bad.
Yeah. That's how I found that. Do you know what I mean? I think it was called. What was it? Oh, well, I can't remember the name of the band, but they did a. What was?
I can find it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I want to say the band name so people know what we're talking about, but like.
So they can avoid it.
Well, maybe some people will be drawn to it. That kind of name will attract certain people. But they covered the Beverly Hills Cop theme, which.
But they didn't. Corpse fucking.
Thank you. So, but the thing about it was that was kind of cool. When I first started, I was like, oh, they're doing Axel F. This might be interesting. And so they do Axel F, and he does like the Cookie Monster vocal over the melody of the Axel F line on a keyboard. And then it just shifts to like, you know, plowing guitars and screaming vocals, and it has like no connection to the song. Do you know what I mean? It was like, well, that would have been interesting if they did something with Axel F and tried to turn it into like a metal song. Do you know what I mean? But it was just like blah, and so it just lost me at that point. And a name like Corpse Fucking kind of is like, I don't mind bands that have you know, like Cannibal Corpse. I always thought that was kind of a cool band name, but like Corpse Fucking is too on the nose. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's not even discreet.
Necrophilia taken?
Yeah.
Was the
Necrophilia would have been better than Corpse Fucking. Right. Like, you know, Necrophilia at least there's some, you know, there's like, you know, there's a movie called Necrophilia. Do you know what I mean? Like, but Corpse Fucking, it's just like I'm only here to bother you. Do you know what I mean? I'm only here to I'm just here to be obnoxious.
Here to bother you.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
But the point was that YouTube thing where you're like, oh, the best Italian metal. I don't know how reliable that is. That's why I want to hear from people that are like Italian metal fans. You know, I feel like I want to like do this for like, you know, I feel like I need to get to my roots and, you know, explore Italian metal. So, but
Rhapsody Fire is an Italian band.
Yeah, and I knew them as Rhapsody before, but
yep.
I guess they've changed their name. I wonder why they changed their name to Rhapsody of Fire. Was there like a style change or a lineup change that led to that, do you think? Or like...
I think there was probably another band already named Rhapsody.
Okay. But yeah, so I guess we should get into music we're listening to. I know we wanted to kind of cover that.
Yeah.
You know, you can go first if you want to.
Last night I found that band, The Gathering. I'd never heard of them before. Apparently they're the predecessors to bands like Evanescence and all those female-led power metal bands.
They were really good when they first came out. I remember them. I used to get like those catalogs from like Earache and Roadrunner and all those different like metal labels, and that's eventually how I just started finding music. And they had an album called Mandalion, which was the song you sent me was from that album, and that was the one album of theirs I had, and I remember it being really impactful because I had never, up until then, I hadn't heard too many metal bands with female vocals. And when I did, it was usually like Paradise Lost style, where like they have a female vocalist come in and sing something on the side, and you know, it really kind of worked. Did you go deeper into their discography, or did you just?
I listened to about 10 of their songs. I just found whatever YouTube was suggesting. And I listened to it. The first one I heard was the best. I'm trying to remember the name of the song. I sent it to you, I think.
That was Strange Machines.
Yeah, Strange Machine. I thought that was really good. And there was another one that was really low and slow and plodding, and then she would come in and sing a little poppy, and then the band would go back to its sort of semi-prog roots. I really liked that one too. I love the fact that they were mixing it up, that no one song sounded predictable.
Yeah, they were a huge surprise. They have a really interesting sound. Even to this day, they stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
I
surprised no more people don't know them actually.
Yeah, I didn't like the song Eleanor, but I understand people do like that one. Sand and Mercury was a good song. Leaves was good. So that's 3 songs off of Strange Machines that are good.
Yeah, yeah, it's all off that album. The album's called The Gathering, and it's got like a weird. What's the cover art was really strange for the time. It's like a
Yeah, it's got an African mask on the left-hand side and some weird texture on the right.
yeah.
The album title is Mandy Lion. The band is called.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
That's okay. That's for people that want to go find them.
But but yeah. So it's funny. I always, whenever I think of this band, that's one of the things that I always have trouble with. I always have trouble finding them because all I remember is what the cover looked like, and I remember Mandalion and The Gathering, and I can never remember what the band name was and all that. So it's always very confusing to me because it was one of these things. I remember finding them back in the day, but I probably listened to them for a little while, for like 6 months, and then I would just think about them from time to time and not really explore their full line of albums. So what else have you been listening to?
Well, I'm still trying to conquer all of Buckethead's work. I think I'm about 50 or 60 songs down. I used to have a favorite called Cosmic Furnace, but I found a new favorite called Crumple, which is over 20-30 minutes long. I don't know how long it is. It's ridiculous. I don't know how he maintains it. I don't know how he plays that song that long. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how he writes so many songs.
Yeah. There's a lot of songs he does that I can't stand, right? It'll start with this kind of overly electronic sound to it, and I'll say, okay, that's part of that milieu of songs that he makes. I don't need to listen to that. I know I don't like it. And then he's got bluesy songs that I don't care for. But anything that he's doing where he's just going, where he's off the rails, that they're all on my watch later list now. I started a whole thing on YouTube to keep track of the stuff he's done that I like. I think there's almost 30 songs on there now.
When you get through that, we'll finally do our Buckethead episode. Because you got
it. I'll just be talking.
What was that?
How will we do that? You don't listen to Buckethead.
No, I listen to Buckethead. I just don't. I've never done a deep dive into Buckethead.
Got it.
Like when I was so I after I was in a death metal band, I started doing music soundtracks with my cousin Dave. He was a guitarist, and we would record these things on a 4-track. And he and I were both really into similar types of music. And Buckethead was something that he discovered, and he used to show to me. And so I knew Buckethead through him. And it's one of those things where sometimes when somebody who you respect musically like that introduces you to an artist or a band, you continue to carry that respect for that band, and you'll occasionally go back to them and explore them. So every once in a while I go and I look at some Buckethead stuff, but he's just so intimidating because he's got so many. It's like, where do you even begin with Buckethead? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he has so much stuff, and like, if you get one album versus another, you're going to get very different things. So, usually what I do when I look at Buckethead is I just type Buckethead into YouTube and see what comes up, because okay, we'll see what he has to offer. But he's very impressive. I always liked his version of the Halloween theme that he does with both hands. That's always been very impressive to me, because I always wanted to know how he was able to do that. That's really hard to do. Like it probably looks very easy, but playing both those melodies together on a guitar is I can't imagine how he pulled that off.
He has a lot of part 1s and part 2s and part 3s and then sub names for things, and I think that makes it difficult to find what you're looking for when you're listening to Buckethead. And Black Hill does the same thing. It's Black Hill and Silent Island. It's Black Hill and Hecla. It's Black Hill and somebody else, Uncle Silas or whatever. And I don't know, as a casual listener of that band, I have to do a deeper dive now to find out, well, what exactly is this? Is he performing with somebody else and he wants to give them equal credit, which I respect? But now I'm struggling to find more stuff from this person, because In the Woods is the channel that he's hosted on, but they host a ton of different kinds of music. So I can't even use that channel to find more of just Black Hills.
Okay. Yeah, it's really dizzying, but he's, I mean, it's just as a guitar player alone, I Buckethead's somebody who you have. I feel like I respect his work and what he does.
Sure, I wasn't saying that I didn't.
But
I was just saying his labeling process sometimes.
Oh no! I was just saying about no. I wasn't trying to suggest that you were saying that. But what else have you been listening to?
Well, Black Hills. You sent me Black Hills to listen to.
Which you've probably heard more of that now than me, because I just found that one thing and I was like, this is kind of interesting.
Oh yeah. I've listened to 4 of his albums now.
Okay, is it all that sound or is it vary more?
Pretty much the stuff. I found one that I didn't like because it wasn't that sound. It was something else. And I think it's great that he likes to experiment, but when you find something you like, you want it to keep being that thing.
Yeah.
And so and what's especially hard is when you stumble upon something and the first song you hear from them is their best. So you start chasing other songs to try to get that high again, and nothing they made is that good.
Yeah, that is a problem. That does happen.
That happened to me with Pain of Salvation. The first song I ever heard was The Perfect Element Part 1, and I don't think they've ever topped that song. It's so freaking good. It's 10 plus minutes long. That happens to me a lot when I listen to stuff. I listen to the new Opeth album a lot. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I know it's really good. I can't say that it's not really good, but I don't think that it resonates with me the way the previous album did.
Okay. Do you know why?
I think I haven't really sat down in the dark and just listened to the new album and let myself absorb it. Instead, it's just background noise, and that's unfair to a band like Opeth, who really needs your concentration.
Yeah, that's one of the problems I have when I'm trying to listen to music like that. Is it does require focus, and so you can misjudge it if you don't give it your due attention.
Yeah. But it is a complicated album. I am not going to sugarcoat it. The new Opeth album is complicated. And I'm worried about the new Fates Warning album. I just listened to the first single from it. It's not good. I've only hated one Fates Warning song. Actively hated one Fates Warning song. But in general, the last 3 albums they've done have been lighter than their previous work, and that's never the direction I want to see a band going. Okay. So that makes me nervous too, since we're talking about what we've been listening to. The entire album isn't out yet. They just put out the one single. But it's not a good sign. Okay. That's always exciting, and there's some trepidation when a new album is coming out. So the problem is that every Fates Warning fan I know, right? We're all so fucking fervent about this band. We're such zealots that we dare not say anything bad, even when it is bad. Okay. I could respect that. I understand. You don't want to get kicked out of the cathedral. Yeah. You voice your criticisms cautiously. Yeah, exactly. I once said about the previous album, I said, this is the first time they've released a song that I hated. I won't say which, but that's all I said on my group. And one guy immediately said, is it Going Home? Because that's the song that's really weird on the album that doesn't belong there. The vocals and the beat don't match Fates Warning. I said, yeah. He said, yeah, I felt the same way. I don't get it. But that was the one time I felt comfortable saying something, because the song was so bad in correlation to what they'd been doing before. Okay. But other people have a similar problem. Not everybody. There's tons of people that love it, but there's lots of people that have a similar problem with that particular song and just have to ask what the fuck. But again, we're all scared to say anything bad because we like this church. It's a good church. Well, and every band is entitled to make bad albums from time to time. Like they sometimes have to make bad albums to cleanse their creative, systems a little bit. Do you have any more that you've been listening to, or should I give? That's a lot. I'm trying to remember at the moment. I should keep better list. Yeah, I always end up having to like go through what I was watching on YouTube or go through my Amazon Music thing and look at my history to find what I was listening to. And I listened to that band Frozen Crown. If anybody wants to listen to them, the song is called Never Ending. That's the only one I liked. They they otherwise have really stupid lyrics. Their album is called Crown of Frost.
Okay.
Frozen Crown of Frost. That's so stupid. That's just an awful name for an album. But they have one good song called Never Ending, if you like power metal.
Okay. I haven't heard them before, so
Robert Schwalb just tagged me in something. A band. They sound like UADA. What the hell is their
what's
name?
the name of the band?
I'm trying to look it up. You're gonna have to talk for a little bit while I
Okay,
look.
so I'll talk. So I've been listening to a lot of non-metal. So I've been listening to a lot of Frank Sinatra and Henry Purcell harpsichord music. So I'll get that out of the way. But
People can hear you, right?
yeah, I know. I'm not ashamed. Frank Sinatra is a great man, and Henry Purcell is a. I don't know. The Funeral March of Queen Mary is, to me, one of the best songs ever written, and his harpsichord music I've always loved. But you were talking about proto metal on Facebook with me, and I've always kind of liked Thin Lizzy, but I and I've done these sort of periodic mini deep dives into their music, and I understand their importance in metal because of the twin guitar and all that stuff. But I've been really meaning to go and do a proper deep dive, and so I kind of got my toes wet with that and was listening to a bit of Thin Lizzy, and which I'm enjoying a lot, and also the what's the name of the singer? Phil Lyon, is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a really compelling person. Like, he has an interesting personal history, and the way that he died is like, whenever there's a tragic death, like one of the reasons that I'm so into Phil Oakes is because of the tragedy surrounding his death. And Phil Lyon has a really tragic death. One of the stories I heard about him was that his body was riddled with abscesses because of it sounds like he was doing heroin, and somehow he got infections in his body, and it ultimately led to sepsis and then heart failure. I don't know the whole story. I don't know if I'm getting it right. But when I read that he had abscesses in his body, I've had abscesses and they're awful, but to have them inside your body to the extent that he must have, I can't imagine a more horrifying death. So that added weight to just all the music that I was hearing, because he really didn't have that long to make music. Do you know what I mean? Like, they were a 70s band, and then, he died in the mid 80s. So, that's not a long time. So I'm enjoying that. Chemist, the doom metal band, has an EP out called Doomed Heavy Metal, which I've been listening to. It's not like a new proper album. It's just kind of some music, I think, mainly to kind of keep fans, going. But they have a cover of Rainbow in the Dark on there, which is kind of interesting. And they definitely went the direction of fully bringing Rainbow in the Dark into the Chemist aesthetic rather than trying to be Ronnie James Dio. So it's a much different sounding version of that song. And they also have a really cool song on the EP that's an older song they did called A Conversation with Death. And it's basically a folk song, but they've turned it into a doom metal song, and it's got a really good sound.
Chemist song that you sent to me was really good.
I think that was A Conversation with Death, but I'll have to check.
It was a conversation.
Yeah, that's a folk song. That's like an Appalachian folk song, I think. But but it really works. Like, and I like folk music, and I've never really been able to enjoy folk music and metal together. Those don't usually work. So it was interesting to see their take on that. A lot of my other stuff that I've been listening to is more I don't know, not too exciting, not too different from what I normally listen to. I was having a conversation with somebody about Cathedral and about my love for that first album and my lack of love for their later albums, and so I started revisiting Through the Ethereal Mirror for that reason, because there's a lot of stuff on there that I can appreciate, but at the time I was so turned off by, and so I've been coming at that from a new angle, listening to it, and so that's pretty much what I've been listening to. There's probably a few other things, but I can't really remember. Did you find what you were looking for, by the way?
Yeah, I did, and I found a couple other things that I've been listening to. I've been listening to Rush a lot lately. I don't know why, but I've been digging through their old work. The band I was looking for that Schwab told me about is called Nug, N-U-G.
Okay.
And the song is called Beast. and it's 7.5 minutes, and it's pretty brutal, but
Nug?
it's good brutal. It's not just guys slapping tin cans together.
Okay, hold on. Let me write that name down. Nug Beast.
Yeah.
That the name Nug is not grabbing me, but if somebody's recommending
Yeah.
it, they must be doing so for a reason. So
Yeah.
I'll definitely.
He tagged me in a post. I listened to them. There's some of the Cookie Monster was tough for me, but overall the underlying music going on there is so good I didn't care.
Okay.
And that's always highest praise, in my opinion. Do you listen to Alien Weaponry?
No.
Okay, they're another great. They're a New Zealand Maori metal band. They have
Wait, are they a folk metal band, or is that just their background?
No.
Okay. No, because there's a lot of bands that like their ethnic heritage becomes like the style of music they do. So there's like a lot of like folk metal bands that.
It's actually 3 white guys. It looks like, but they sing in Maori.
Oh, okay, all right. Wait, they sing in the
language of Maori, yeah.
Okay, is that their background, or is that just the language they know?
I don't know. They don't look Maori at all.
But people I've known from New Zealand sometimes don't look like that's their background, but it turns out to be so. Like I don't know much about New Zealand, but it might be kind of like here, where like somebody doesn't necessarily look Native American, but they turn out to be. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. I don't know enough about New Zealand. But all right, I got 2 on my list to check out. Nug, the song is Beast, and Alien Weaponry is the name of the band.
Yeah, Alien Weaponry is the name of the band.
Is there a particular album or song that's worth checking out?
The song is Kai Tangata.
How do you spell that?
Kai, one word. Second word Tangata, Tangata.
Tangata. Kai Tangata. Okay, I got it.
And it's about this Maori king who goes to England and comes back with all these rifles and changes the landscape of Maori fighting.
Okay. All right.
But it's a great song. It is absolutely fantastic.
Okay. I'll check them both out, and I'll see what what that what they sound like. And I guess the only other thing is we were talking about the possibility of doing a proto metal episode at some point,
right?
And so I probably should put that out there too to people that if there's any proto metal that you want us to cover, or you think deserves to get be part of the conversation, let us know, because we'll I'll take the time to listen to stuff.
We also want to do an episode about Queensryche.
That's true. Which that's all you like. You know that band, so I'll trust whatever you have to say about it.
Okay.
I know I ended up getting that album. The Warning, was that the name of the album?
Yeah.
And I loved it. I there was a period of time where I was just listening to it constantly.
Yep.
But I didn't go any further into their catalog because I didn't. I don't know. I just never got the impulse to do so. So but I always have been kind of curious what their evolution was after that. After I was listening to it, so
sure, we can talk about that absolutely on the end episode. I can talk about when they failed, what went wrong, why they're not a band anymore.
Well, I have a lot of questions about the knife incident that I've read about with them.
Okay.
Where the singer, I guess, took out a knife or something. I don't know. I heard different versions.
I don't know so much about the knife incident, but I know that the reason they split was over the fan club and money being stolen.
You should look up that guy's name and knife and see what comes up.
Jeff Tate is the singer, but I'll look it up.
Yeah. Maybe it was just a rumor that I read somewhere. There's so much bad information on the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so I guess now we've covered everything. We've gone for an hour and 20 minutes, so we probably should end the episode here.
Nobody is still listening.
Yeah, I guarantee there's people put this stuff on in the background and they're in and out, and I guarantee there are people that make it to the end. I know I make it to the end of very long podcasts sometimes.
I will give you $1 for every person that comments at the bottom of the video and says I made it to the end.
So whoever's listening, if you're listening, comment, because I really could use that dollar money. So we're gonna hold Jim to it. But
yeah.
I'll be rich
I don't
soon
have
enough.
deep pockets, but I can afford the $2 that you're.
You know what? That's a
making
really
me.
bad idea because I could be nefarious and just go out and say, "Hey, people, can you just go in and comment there and say you
Yeah.
listen to the whole thing?" So
Yeah.
that's. But
You
but
only
anyway,
know 6 people, so I'm okay.
I know more than 6 people, and I have a big family.
I have a big family. Oh my god, they're really gonna work hard to get you that buck.
But they're loyal. They're very loyal people. My family. But yeah. So anyways, we'll head out, and until next time, we will talk to you later.